I cannot wait. Recording is in progress.
It is. It is. Yeah. The idea, right? Data view. It's scary. Like the plugin is scary, right? Now,
Yes.
now,
Yes, it is.
I have put off using DataView for over a year. I've installed it multiple times, countless times, and gone, I don't get it, and then uninstalled it. And then I watch people, and then I see people say, DataView's amazing, it's great, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, yeah, don't get it. I don't get it. And I could never, I understood how it worked. Oh yeah, you make a table, or you make a list of all your query search. It's great.
That is not how it works.
But it is. Fundamentally, that's how it works. And I was like, I can make a list of stuff, but it's just search. And I was like, what's the difference between this and just searching for something with the normal search? And the thing is, right, there isn't a difference if that's all you do with it.
Yeah.
If that's all you do with it, there's no difference. It's as soon as you start adding in where and then conditions, or adding in more columns to the table, or sorts to the table, or insert literally every other code variable you can put. Like, imagine Notion formulas, but inside the filters and sorts and groups.
No, that's offensive. That is offensive. It's not Notion formulas.
No, it's more complex than that.
Way better. It is not Notion formulas. I'm not going to be popular with Notion people. After last week's episode and this episode.
What I do want to say though is I think using Notion, like I mentioned, I think it was the last episode, using Notion as a dictionary, I guess, to use to talk about DataView. It might have been off camera actually. But when you think of Notion, a lot of people know Notion. They understand, okay, there's a property in a database. They're sort of getting their head around it in the PKM note-taking productivity space anyway. People outside of Notion obviously no idea. But people in the space, they're starting to get, okay, I can filter, I can sort, I can use properties. Cool. Inside of DataView, it's the same thing. It's the same principle. But the property, instead of it being in a database, is in a page. And you can have any property in any page. You don't have to have the page in the database to have the property.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have that constraint. And the property can be in the YAML or front matter at the top of the page, or it could be written in the page in two different ways. And it could be in line of a block as well. So you don't have to reference the whole page. It could be just a block. So it's databases with properties, but the properties aren't for just pages in the database. It's pages in other databases and in blocks in any page in any database. So it's like a database, just no constraints.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Coda.
Yeah, they're inline formulas.
And like they're inline formulas, and I'm like, yum. Like just watching what you have done, and I'm like, oh, I know what that means. I could do that too. That's quite exciting. And
what mic are you using? It sounds like you're eating your mic every once in a while.
Does it? I'm on my AirPods because my proper mic is dead.
Ah. Okay, yeah, so
is it really noticeable?
Very noticeable.
Let me see what I can do if I can fix it. If not, then I'll switch back and we'll just see how long it lasts.
Yeah, I mean it's not going to be a long episode anyway. But yeah, so while you're doing that, I'll have a quick chat with like a general data view. So with data view, there's the normal data view. Have you tried the mic?
Yeah, how's that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. I don't know what you've done. Have you just changed it to the mic?
Yeah, I've just changed it so that it's not got the it's on transparency mode basically.
Yeah, it's better. It's still different, but it's better. Yeah, so data view, you've got the normal data view, which is what I would class as just basics. Like you can filter from places, you can sort different things, and you can look for specific pages, specific tags, a path, or anything. Then there is the more advanced use of dataview, which is DQL. I don't know what that stands for. I think it's like data query logic, something like that.
Yeah.
And you can start adding in other things into the where clauses, like contains this or doesn't contain that. And when you think of Notion formulas, that's basically what it is. It's if, contains, and all that sort of stuff, and buts and ors and ands and other words, with the greater thans, the smaller thans, the equal thans, the not equal thans, and all the other symbols. It's great fun if you understand formulas anyway. And then on top of that, you've got a dataview JS, which which basically says there's JavaScript inside of Obsidian. Do what you want.
Go play.
Yeah. And all of that is in one plugin, which I think is pretty impressive. And I was having a conversation with someone earlier about dataview, and I was realizing, because they were saying, well, where can I learn about it? And I was like, I don't know. Like, there are videos on YouTube. I'm going to speak candidly because that's what we do. And the videos aren't bad. They tell you what you need to know. But I can't relate to any of them. Like, they say, they come up with these weird examples. You're like, when am I ever going to need to do that? Yes, I understand it's for showing practicality, but I'm like, when am I ever going to need to reference a project in a person that doesn't exist, or a project that doesn't exist, in all of this information that you probably won't need, but you might need if this magical scenario appears? Like, I don't get it. Which is why I struggle with dataview. And the two main videos that I've watched on YouTube that are the most popular with dataview are great. They tell you exactly what you need to know for the basics. I don't know when, how, why I would do it, which is why I didn't use dataview. What are your experiences with it?
Yeah, this is something that, so it's not necessarily dataview specific, but it's like coding, like JavaScript in general, because that's what I've been learning. I've been learning JavaScript and React and all of these little delicious codey pieces that I wanted to learn for so long. But the problem is it teaches me the fundamentals, and then that's it. And you're kind of like left without any direction, without any concepts that are like related to your own wants, desires, and needs. And so you're like, well, where do I get all of these like little components and the pieces of it, but how do I actually do what I want to do? And there aren't really any resources. I created a tweet a little while back, like, I want to do this. How do I do it? Quiet. As I'll just learn this, just learn that. And I'm like, right, yeah, but I do get that. And I've been doing that for years, various like tools, various apps. Obviously, going back to Notion Formulas is a form of JS from what I understand. Like the syntax is very similar.
Yeah.
Unlike Excel, which is just Excel and Google Sheets and stuff.
Yeah, that's different.
And whereas it's JS. So I've got some knowledge there that I have of each of the pieces, but putting it together is where my brain is like, well, how do I even do the thing that I want to do? And that is what I found and experienced with dataview as well. It's very much like, I know what I can do. I've looked through all of the documentation and read through that and like, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize you could do that. That's cool. And I have the pieces, but like linking it together is just like, well, where do you even start? Like, where do you even start? Like actually connecting things together, releasing things and doing something with all of the things that you've learned. And that's where I got caught with all types of coding, and what brings me straight back to no code, because I just use no code and then put a line of JavaScript in every so often, or pull in a JSON file and do some magic tricks with that and just get over it, because that's all I can do. Because there is no like gap between creating massive bits of code and programming and learning what the bits of programming code are. There's no guide. You're just like, okay, this is a for loop. This is the this is the conditionals. This is a variable. There you go.
Something else that's driving me nuts when trying to learn dataview, which I mean, the dataview chat in Discord is amazing. Just gonna like upvote them like 100 times. There are so many people in there that know what they're doing, and if they don't, they figure it out. It's a working community. People can come up with different solutions. I was trying to figure something out, and I got like 4 different solutions to the same thing, which I got to pick from, and I understood some more than others. So that's what code is. But when I was looking at all the examples or the help documentation, it was written in code language. This function does blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't understand the words that you're trying to explain the code in. How am I meant to understand what the code does if I don't understand the explanation? Like, what? And I feel like the simple terms are taken out of code because it feels like a different language. It's not just that the code is a language you need to learn, but the code that the language that they explain the code in is also a different language. And I'm like, what is this? And then I go and look at examples. Do you know what they do? They just have the code there. I'm like, yeah, but what does it do? Put comments in there. Tell me what it does.
Like, give me some freaking context. And it goes back to a previous episode where we were talking about like jargon, and it is so jargon heavy. Like, it is jargon plus more jargon, and you are just stuck trying to guess what it may mean.
Exactly.
Because you don't know.
And so this is something that I've slowly figured out, is that the language in there is really easy to understand. And when you sort of start to understand the basics of the language, it's very easy to read someone's code. You're like, oh, I get that, I get that, I get that. There's just that little bit in the middle. I'm like, yeah, I don't understand what that means. And the way that I learn code is by quite literally, I mean, in Notion, when I was doing formulas, I would have a property with a formula in there, and the name of the property would be what it does. I'd have like 15 properties, all with the broken up code to make sure everything works, and then bung it all together at the end. And I'm doing the same inside of Obsidian with the dataview. But something dataview allows me to do, which Notion didn't, is I can just put a comment in the code to remind me what it does. It doesn't affect anything. It is just a reminder. So if I go into any of the dataviews that I have, I'm like, yeah, what does that do again? It tells me. And so same conversation, but sort of separate business side is when I do push out this template that I'm building, there will be dataview queries in there. But the dataview queries, because you're going to get the local copy, will have the comments in there explaining what it does. So it's not here's a dataview, figure it out. It's here's a dataview, but here's an explanation of how it works, which inside of Notion would be this filter does this sort does this. I think those explanations are really helpful and really useful for people trying to learn it. I do have a couple of things I want to show you as well. But
I really can't wait to see it. It kind of goes with something I was thinking about this morning. So on Twitter, I think it was Elite Digital. No, it was two separate people on Twitter that had comments. One was a reply to Tiago's tweet around explaining how simplicity, what he means is simplicity. And then I'm just like, wait, every time I see someone write simplicity and put it in the same boundary as minimalism, I'm like, nah, I am so tired of that. It's going to stop. And so if I see, with love to anyone who's listening, if you write simplicity and you mean minimalism, I'm going to come and ask what you actually mean.
I know what I'm doing.
Because I know what you're going to do. But I don't think I am. My suspicion is I don't think even you could do it unironically.
Oh, I could try.
You could try, but I don't think you would. I have a suspicion you probably wouldn't. And this happened to two separate occasions. One was in simplicity, and one was like life purpose. And everybody uses this language and these words, but they don't have that context around what they actually mean by that. Like, what are you actually trying to say? Like, where are you actually trying to go? I don't want to rehash the other episode, but like, really, like, what is simplicity? It's, as I said in that episode, it's enoughness. Like, what is enough for you? And because the pithy tweets are so easy to write, all of the context is lost. And people are just like, yeah, it's great. It's great. Give me the pithy tweets. Great. But also give me the context. Like, or provide an option to ask questions for more context. And what I am actually doing when I see these pithy tweets, I'm asking. I want to know more about what they actually mean. Because often when you get further down, it's actually far more nuanced and deeper, more interesting than the pithy flipping tweets. And so if you see a pithy tweet, I invite you to ask a question about what they mean. I did it this morning with, I think it was Elite Digitist or Digital or something like that. And it was I loved the conversation because he was there like sharing these things and sharing, and what do you have? And I'm like, finally, we're getting somewhere interesting to actually have interesting conversations linking back to the philosophy of practice, because they prompt you to think about what you actually mean with what you're saying. And do you believe what you say? Because often there is that, I mean, I've done it before in the past where I've said one thing and then said another thing, and they are in direct contradiction with each other because I haven't given the context around it. And the words really do matter. They are so darn important because, once again, this is productivity. These are people's lives that you're messing with if you don't respect it. And you have to respect it. You have to give the context. It's wonderful to talk about how much revenue you're earning, but talk about the bit behind the revenue. Because that's the important bit. That's the interesting bit. If I was to ever share revenue numbers, I would be sharing the bits behind the scenes. Because that is like so much more valuable. In fact, I've got to give Ali Abdaal a little bit of credit because he does do that. Because he shares his revenue, and yes, it's a bit clickbaity, and he gets loads of money from talking about how much money he earns, which is just beautiful. But he also talks about how much he spends, and he's really loving. I can actually gain something from the videos that Ali is producing, because he talks about his $2.4 million flat, and then talks about why, and really gives more context. And I think that is something that I would like to see more creators do, is to really talk about the context behind it. And no, it's not as easy to do in a pithy tweet. Believe me, I've tried. I do try. That's why I don't tweet very much. But there's still something to be had from just giving a little bit of context in your pithiness. And it helps to connect the dots.
Yeah, I think that comes down to depth. Like, I think a lot of people, when they tweet quite shallow. I think that's partly an affordance or constraint of the amount of characters you have, the amount of words you can use. So it's very difficult to get that out, which is where threads become potentially useful, but threads require people to actually read through the whole thread and pay attention, sort of thing, which Twitter, do you really want to pay attention on Twitter? I think most of the threads that I read, I bookmark, and then I read them when I actually want to read them. Like Thomas Frank's thread on his template thing. I saw one of the messages like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And then I saw it as a thread. So I'll bookmark the thread and I'll read it another time. Because, yeah. So, yeah, I agree. For those listening, you are still a bit like roboty every once in a while. So for those listening, apologies. But yeah.
Yeah, so are you for me. So that's interesting.
Oh, maybe it's Zoom then. Maybe it's not your mic.
Maybe it is Zoom. Because you were a bit roboty too.
Ooh. Don't know. Maybe Zoom's not having a good moment. We'll have to see.
I mean, Zoom. Yeah, it is Zoom.
Yeah, it did have a bit of a moment at the start. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to have a share just to give you some ideas. For those watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this as well. If you're listening, I will try and describe it.
Oh, wow.
What?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Calendar. Yeah. Did you not know that was a thing?
No, I haven't explored enough because I got annoyed because I didn't understand what was going on.
Oh, right.
Carry on.
Yeah. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, you can make a calendar in dataview. And you can see I've got a dot in there, and when I hover over, it's a page preview for that video. So this is essentially a content calendar with dataview. Yeah, that wasn't one of the exciting points, John.
I know, but I mean, I can see the rest of the exciting points, but I just like visually, it's like very appealing to see the calendar inside of a page. I was like, oh, that's nice. I like that. Yeah. It's nice. It's just a nice view. Looks
Yeah.
nice.
It's also very simple. I mean, it's literally calendar, when is the property that I've called it. It could be date, it could be whatever. From projects, because that's the project tag, and then where is when. So where is like a filter for the when day. So when you have a look at the property, you can see when ... that's the date.
That's nice. Very nice.
Yeah, it's pretty simple as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like
it's
that.
it's interactable. So like next month, blah 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 today. So yeah,
And I like that it is interactive in reader. Is it reader view? I think it's reading view.
No, I'm in live preview.
Live preview. Because that's the one thing that obviously we said before, wasn't it? Around things in live preview. Sometimes they don't show, but I do like the fact that it's in live preview and you can see the calendar. I like that. It's nice.
Yeah,
it's very nice.
Below it is just a list of stuff. So this is what's in the calendar. So kind of like in Notion, where you have your calendar and then you have your task list at the side. You can do the same thing.
Nice.
And it's just a list from projects using the when property and then sorting by when. So it's showing the when after the list. So there's the page and there's the date. So you've got your list of whatever's in the calendar, which again, you could do in Notion. And if you wanted to, this is something else that I've learned as like I built this calendar and I was like, oh, can I make a list like you do in Notion? Yes, I can. Oh, cool. And then I remembered, actually, can I limit things? Because inside of Notion, you can limit to 10, 25. Yes, you can.
You can. Yeah.
You just type limit and then whatever number you want.
It's beautiful. It is so simple, and I do love that. Yeah.
The next two are quite exciting. I'm going to go with this one first. So what this is this is automatically, the code is a little bit nasty though, because it's progress bars. But what it's doing is it's looking for all of the tasks in these pages, and it's automatically creating a progress bar from it. So if I open up the test page, you can see I've got one done and one not done. If I tick that, so it's not been completed, then this will update when it goes back into there it is, 0. And it's also changed the goal. So I tick that done. It's going to go there. It'll take a second or two to update. And there we go, 50%, because it's 1 out of 2, obviously. And this 20% is the goal of all 3 of these pages because of my goal page.
Oh, that is that. Oh,
so
that's quite nice.
So it's looking for these 3 pages and finding the tasks for that. So that's what the goal is. It's just a goal page and put those in. I take the page out, it doesn't look for it anymore. And if there isn't a task in any of those pages, like the Vaultcraft page, there wasn't a task in it, it says 0. I added a task, so it appeared. If I take that task away, it would disappear from this view because it doesn't have a task in, so it doesn't contribute towards the goal. I was like,
that is very nice.
Yeah. I will very briefly show you the code, but everyone that doesn't like code, avert your eyes now. Yeah. So
that's not actually that quote unquote complicated.
No, but yes.
Okay, if you're talking from a code perspective, it's simple. If you're talking from a no-code perspective, run away now.
Precisely. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you basically, I've got comments in here. Create table. That creates the table. Then I've got the other section in there, which is the progress bars of the table. Then you've got the actual names of the columns because it's a table. And then remove the bullet points because it's in an array that you're pushing through. But yeah, so basically what you'd need to do is just change a couple of pages, a couple of names in there to change the name of like projects, progress, and goal progress. And then, so inside of here, I've got goal 1, from here. So it's outgoing from goal 1. That's what I'm looking for. You can just add another goal in there. Add as many goals in there as you want. You could put the goal progress underneath. Nice. You can change it where you want. And I will say I got some of this code from the example database in Obsidian dataview. So like another shout out to them. And then the other one here, which I think is going to be much more reminiscent of a Notion database right here, is tabs.
I was wondering that. I did see the table tabs and like, ooh, I like.
Yeah. So
that's nice.
and you can have as many as you want in here, obviously, because it's fully customizable. And I'm looking for depth verifiable and perspective because that's to do with Vaultcraft, but you can add anything in there. So that could be your date. It doesn't have to be a table. It could be a list. You could have a table, then a list, and then a calendar in different views. So you could have your calendar view up here in calendar, and then you could have your to-do list in this tab, and you can have your table in this tab, which is basically what Notion's databases are with their views.
Oh, well, shit.
Yep. Yep. And you can see at the top here, I've got done. So I'm in the done section. We've got data view testing page. So that's there because it's looking for the status of done. If I change this to doing, it's going to take a second. And they go, it's gone now because it's now in doing. Yep. Yep. Really nice.
I have no words. That is really nice. It is a little slow though.
I am on Zoom.
I am being really picky, obviously, but
slow. It's like a second.
Instantaneous. Yes, I know, but Obsidian is not a second.
Fair. There's the codey stuff behind it, and it's not. It doesn't look nasty, but that's because it's been made to look nice almost. Like I've got comments in there of what things are and what things might do and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, and what I think is useful here is everything inside of Notion seems to be doable using dataview. So I'm going to stop screen sharing now. But when I think about it, the table, the list, the calendar are all doable there. When you look at the Kanban board, you have a Kanban plugin inside of Obsidian if you want all of that. I personally don't use a Kanban board, but most Kanban boards, you could just use a different view of the data view and just toggle between the doing, done, whatever. Instead of having an actual board, you can just split the views. Timeline, who uses the timeline view in Notion? Sorry, bit of shade, but like I don't know anyone that really uses it. And then the gallery, well, you can just have a data
client who does.
What's their use case?
Kind of tech.
Okay.
So they are tech people. So timeline view tech people that kind of tracks a little bit. Big, massive projects with website builds. So.
Okay. I mean, you could make that obviously in DataView, but it'd be much more difficult than a timeline view, unless you've got a template from someone that you just like, oh yeah, I'll take that, which I certainly think is possible in the future with Obsidian templates. I know Notion templates are a bit nasty, but I think data view templates would be a bit different because it's much more skillful in creating that rather than a Notion database with filters and sorts. If you've got formulas, like really complex formulas in Notion, fair enough. But I mean, if your template is just filters and sorts, anyone can do that.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I mean, some of the templates I see, I'm like, I could recreate that in 5 minutes. Why would I bother building it? Obviously, I'm not their target audience. But the same could be said, like if they watch a video on YouTube for 10 minutes and they can recreate it, is it really worth it? Obviously, that's an argue for money, value, what you're getting for your value. But I think a data view like that takes more than a 10-minute video to be able to replicate, unless the video literally tells you exactly how to do it. But still, I think it's going to be longer than 10 minutes.
Probably, yeah. Unless it's copy this code in here.
Yeah, for this exact use case. Which,
but it does pose a question though. When you are getting to that point, because you are pretty much coding your own thing now. That is pretty much
Vaultcraft, yes.
You are now coding. So the question would be: is when you reach that point, does it not make more sense just to code everything from scratch? Not from scratch, but like using the, Yeah,
I agree. And that's why I said I certainly think it depends on where the person is at. People that have no understanding and no grasp of what a filter is and what a sort does, obviously get a template, see how it works, watch the videos. But I think the majority of people inside the PKM productivity space grasp pushing buttons because they can sort of figure it out on their own. It's the adding the formulas or the actual workflow of how they work that's the crux. And getting a template of how you work isn't going to solve the problem of how do I need to do this thing, which is literally
I don't
your
think
business.
You can even have you can't have a template of how you work. It just doesn't exist.
No, because we constantly change.
Yeah.
So,
which I love.
But yeah, so I think with my newfound love for dataview, it'll probably disappear in like a couple of weeks because the novelty will wear off, and I'll be like, this thing sucks. But while I'm in this at this moment in time, this is kind of why I wanted to have a chat with you. Is I feel like there are so many possibilities that dataview offers that aren't being spoken about.
Yeah.
I didn't know about half the stuff that I could do. Like the calendar stuff I figured out, but you didn't know. And I'm like, I mean, I learned that a week and a half ago that you could do a calendar. I don't see much of that on the platforms, on YouTube, on Twitter, in blog posts. I don't see it spoken about apart from in the thread, which is inside the Discord community, in the channel. Like you've got to go looking for it, but you need to know what's there.
It also goes to that research thing as well that we've been talking about around how access to research and being able to learn these things like ecological dynamics and how, unless you're going to sit and watch a 3-hour video or a lecture, you're not going to discover it. Yet at the same time, the potential for growth and development just from learning it is incredible. I mean, I literally I saw Tiago's tweet and I was like, oh yeah, I have this book. I'm going to go back and read it. People who are on the podcast, it's The Extended Mind by Annie Murphy Poole. And I'm just like, yes,
I
I'm
could
going
have
to go
told
back
you
and
that.
reading it. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm going to go back and read that more because I want to read it and it's interesting. But I'm really loving the fact that Tiago is referencing her because what he teaches is exactly like extended cognition and the whole idea of that, and that is exciting. Okay, that Danny made the most interesting face.
So yeah, because I suddenly thought, oh yeah, I've got that reference. So I'm planning out a talk at the moment for something that I don't think I'm allowed to talk about yet, so I'm not going to. But I'm planning out a talk. I was about to say it, and rewind. And in the talk, I mention extended cognition is part of it. If you're interested about the talk, follow me on Twitter, and you'll be able to know when it happens. Yeah. But on the 5th of August, 2021, Tiago tweeted about extended cognition, the extended mind, and what are you clapping for?
Well, like completely avoiding getting
Oh,
into
right.
a lot of trouble. I was just like the mental gymnastics I appreciated watching.
Yes. Yeah. So on the 5th of August 2021, Tiago tweeted about the extended cognition paper from '98, the extended mind book, and then supersizing the mind. I think it was 2014. The book's 2010, then 2014, and then his book was meant to be an extension from that. I don't think it is, but I see the idea.
It's not.
Because I think the other three are philosophical conversations that follow an ideology and arguments for and against this ideology and way of thinking, whereas his is much more action focused, directed towards behavior. And having read the book,
yeah, go on. You finish first.
Yeah, and having read the book, it's more of a case study of him using the philosophy than a discussion about the philosophy.
I think it's very much designed for general population, for people who aren't already in building a second brain or who are just like right on the surface, not for people like us and those listening, because we are way deep underground. The depth is so vast for us now. And I think that's the fun part for people. I got a lot out of Tiago's course, but I got far more out of what I found afterwards. And what I learned afterwards through like the extended mind and through the paper, it was so awesome. And what I am enjoying of Tiago's stuff of it is that he is bringing more people into the fold of like understanding, getting things outside of our heads, and that's so freaking amazing. And I want to see that happening for more quote unquote normal people, the people who are not in the space. Because even that, just from the business owners that I speak to on a day-to-day basis, they all store it all in their head. And it's like, no, you have no idea what you are doing. You are literally taking the wheels off of your car and you are completely crippling yourself.
Yeah.
You are completely crippling yourself. And it's so hard to watch.
It's funny you say that. I'm scripting a video. I scripted a video earlier today about calendar, task management, sort of action management stuff. And I was looking back at my old calendar at university, and I realized all I had in my calendar was my work times, my work schedule, and a meeting every once in a while. Now, at this point, I was training for 3 different sports multiple times a week. I was coaching 2 teams and individuals. I was also doing a degree, like master's degree and undergraduate degree / and then I was also volunteering in a private school local to me, whilst doing like conferences, conversations and stuff for my degree, and having a social life as well, because I was at university. my calendar was like bare. And I remember everything was in my head. I was never late to anything because I was so anxious about being late that I was always early. So in my head, I was constantly going over this. I need to do this. I need to do this. And it was so I didn't forget. As soon as I started using a calendar, all that mental space was like, okay, now what do you do with it? And that's where my research suddenly really started exploding, because I suddenly have all this mental bandwidth that I'm not trying to remember my schedule all the time. Like I remember at university, I'm like, I need to go to Eastbourne College later. And then like an hour later, I need to go to Eastbourne College later. I remember it like right now. I remember me reciting it during a lecture. Oh yeah, I need to remember to go there. Oh, actually, I'm going there, but I need to do this, which I've just remembered during the lecture. I meant to be paying attention to the lecture, not remembering what I'm doing later on or thinking about something else and organizing. Yeah, calendars, very useful. I wish I would. It sounds odd, but I'd wish I'd learnt the skill of calendar organization earlier.
Mm.
What really kicks me and really bugs me now is the concept of periodization was something I was learning about in my master's degree, which is a principle in strength and conditioning where you periodize macro, meso, micro cycles for training. And it's extremely in depth. And I love the spreadsheets of all the information, the intensity, the volume, the load measures, all the different metrics you can use to periodize things, peaking, and loads of other stuff. But my calendar still only had events on. And I'm reflecting back now. I'm like, what was I doing? I was planning out these people's schedules, these pro athlete schedules, literally to the minute in a session. Their whole year was mapped out to the minute, to the amount of effort they put into an exercise. But I can't put on my day that I'm going to do some research at that point. It's just, it's crazy to think about it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, my granular information, because of dataview, my granular information is now actually in Obsidian, because I don't like blasting my calendar with so much stuff. My calendar is for an overview. It's like, okay, I want to do some reading here. Do I have the time for it? Yeah, because I blocked out for it. Then I start. I talk about this in the video, but I give myself a warm up, and like if the warm up is good, I'm like, yes, we're going to go for it. Then I do the session. If I don't, then I'm like, yeah, know what? I'm not going to bother reading. I'll do something else. The actual granular stuff is all in Obsidian. I don't have to worry about it on my calendar.
Yeah.
I think you're the same. Like you have your calendar, and then you have all your granular stuff in Notion.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. All of my granular stuff is in Notion. The baseline general stuff. One thing that like my calendar is still relatively empty. In comparison, I think. And one of the things that I'm still trying to like work out my way for is like the space to do different things. I quite like your workout thing, like the warm up thing. Sorry, where you're like, this is the warm up. Am I getting into it? Yes. If not, then fuck it up. I'm going to go do something else. So that might be something that I explore next, because that is, my calendar is quite empty. Now that is one by design so that I have space for calls with clients. So I think that might always need to be the case. But I am kind of intrigued to think, okay, how would I have a little bit more of like the stuff inside of my head in my calendar? Because I still know I do store a lot in my head. And I think there's some value in that as well for me.
Yeah. Now, I use Morgan, so I'll say how Morgan does it. I know Fantastical can do it, I think, and other apps do it in sort of different ways. But the events for booking calls, like the booking call schedule, my Morgan only looks at my event calendar. It doesn't look at any other calendar. So it doesn't matter how messy my calendar is. My schedule is always open. I have tasks in there mainly because I prefer seeing tasks that I can tick off and having events that just block out my day all the time. Like I want a task to disappear. Like if I've done it, go. Which is why Google Calendar is such a pain in the bum, because you look at the day, you're like, oh yeah, it's great. Like it's shaded out because it's in the past, but maybe I haven't actually done it. It's just in the past. So sometimes I want it to still be highlighted, but it's not. And I'm like, which is why I went to Notion originally for my tasks, because I was like, I need the tasks to show when I haven't done them or blocked, which is why I use Morgan and the tasks. Like, actually, when I look at it now, I know I didn't drink water this morning and I didn't do my workout today because I was busy doing other stuff, but I can see that on my calendar as tasks. They don't interfere with anything else. And I know I've done all the other stuff that was today. I don't know what it was because it's gone. And I know what I'm doing later as well. And I know the podcast now is an event because it's blocked. So if anyone would try to book a time, it's blocked. So I have those distinctions in my calendar. And if I go to tomorrow, that's a bad example. I go Thursday. I've got 2 blocks where it says read and write. They are 2 what I would class as sessions. I have a reading session and a writing session. But that's it. That's all it says on my calendar. Then when I go to Obsidian and I'm going to read something. Actually, no. When I'm reading, I'll go to Zotero. But when I go to the appropriate environment for the thing, I'll go there and then figure it out. I don't need all that information on there. I don't need my 2,000 item Zotero library in my calendar or my 5,000 note tasks in my writing. No, I don't want that. That's way too messy. John, as John like hides away in terror.
Yeah, I could imagine. That is a terrifying thought.
But these principles are things that I learned as a coach to apply to pro athletes. But why is it only pro athletes? Why can't it just be normal people like me? I say I'm normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Normal is relative and boring.
It's a social construct.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that could be a bit dangerous. But yeah, and I guess the final question that I have for you is regarding the potential dataview has in Obsidian when it comes to community collaborative type of work. Because the sync vault, I think we're pretty successful in using it for the podcast.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest limitation with the sync vault with other people is the live editing on the same page. That's the biggest limitation. But if you're not live editing on the same page as someone else, i.e., you have a page, they have a page, and then you just work on individual pages and you don't work on the same page at once, then there's not really an issue there. The next issue becomes, okay, well, how do you manage your tasks and projects inside of Obsidian? Well, from what I've learned about dataview, it could do it. So I then go, okay, what's the other limitation? And the only other limitation I can come up with is licensing, commercial licensing, because Obsidian is an open source. That's literally the only other limitation I have.
I also think once it gets to a certain size, it might be a problem.
What do you mean by certain size?
People? Like, as in a number of people. How many people are in there? at once. The more people that, when it's just the two of us, we both know how to work and like we don't edit it at the same time. But if there's like lots of people, like more than I would say any more than 3 or 4, and it would become perhaps a little bit. You'd have to be super clear.
Yeah, you'd have to work out what's going on, but I think that's kind of the same in Notion. Like you get to a number and people could be making databases all over the place. I know I've spoken with someone that works for a company that I will not mention because they are a very big company / bank in the UK that use Notion, and they have people, like thousands of people in a workspace, and people make databases instead of tasks, and like instead of making a page in the task database, they make a database and put the task in it. Yeah. So they have like, I was speaking with the person at the top because I know them through connections, and he searched through the workspace for task database, and he got over 1,000 like results. So there are over, it was like 1,000 plus. It was like 999 plus results for task databases in this workspace. That's not manageable. That's just bad. That's just bad. I can't think of any logical reason for that to be the case. So there's obviously, yeah, it's scary. And the property management is disgusting. If people can't find a property, they make it again. Yeah, people can't find the property because it's hidden in the view that they're looking at the top. They make it again. They just add the view again.
It's not funny.
But he was telling me about this, and he was saying that he has some databases with over 700 properties, and like 300 of them are just duplicates. Or there's like column 1 or number 1 where someone's made a property by accident and hasn't deleted it. And he said he can't be asked to manage it because he knows if he manages it, they're just going to do it again. So I don't think that's an app problem. I think that's a people problem, a user problem, user error.
Wow, that's terrifying. That's just terrifying.
Yeah.
And I do think that visually, I think Obsidian will struggle. It doesn't look out of the box. It doesn't have the visual flair. I think it is far more.
What's it missing?
I don't think it's.
Like subjectively, I know what you mean, and then I'm trying to attack it objectively, and I can't find something.
Yeah, that's what I'm having as well. It's like it is so, because it doesn't look like Notion and it isn't visually like appealing like Asana and all of the other apps. It is very subjective, but it feels like an app for people like us. And the marketing around.
Why? Because this is what I was trying to put my finger on. When I look at dataview in the page and I look at Notion in the page, like I was doing some screen sharing, well, sort of working out how I'm going to do in a video, and I was looking, I'm like, the only reason I can tell the difference is because the data view, when I look at it, is outputted different to the table view. But when you look at Notion's old database, they look almost identical. And I actually prefer the data view.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think there is something about Obsidian that people are terrified of.
I think it's seeing the hash, like seeing the hash, seeing the bracket when you click on it.
Yes,
I think that's the only thing I can really get to, like seeing the stars with the bold. Like when you go on Notion, you don't see the markdown, whereas in Obsidian, when you click it, you do see the markdown.
Which they are sort of fixing with live preview, but also it's still not quite.
It's not a true what you see, what you get editor.
Yeah, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But yeah, I think that's what it is. It is very much.
It's seeing symbols instead of letters, I think.
Yeah, it's the seeing symbols. I mean, you look at things like Sunsama or Sunsu. There was an app,
Yeah.
a very visually appealing app. I can't remember the bloody name right now. But you look at apps like that. You look at, Morgan, and you look at Fantastical and how visually appealing it is to be in there. And I think for people who aren't like granularly interested like we are, that is a huge barrier to entry. But I am seeing apps come out that kind of have the advanced features but feel visual. Craft Docs is one of them. Like that one has a more visually appealing thing, but even then, it's still not. Yeah, I can't. It is subjective, and there is no objectivity to it. But I think that's the darn point.
Yeah, and I think something that, for me, Obsidian has that Notion doesn't have is obviously the CSS themes, but that's where I think potentially the customization is too much in Obsidian.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I think
the ceiling on Obsidian is more.
Yeah, if there was a Notion and Obsidian baby, and it created something that was kind of in the middle, I think there would be a lot more. It would have a benefit to both sides, and I think I'm not sure whether that's ever going to be created or ever could be created.
I wouldn't want
marketing
it to be.
That would be hell. Yeah, exactly. But in terms of, yeah, I mean, I think a one that pops to mind, like another app that isn't productivity, is like ConvertKit, for example. It looks super simple, really basic, and like you can just do what you need to do. But there is great power under the hood, like the liquid templating. If once there is so much potential. And then you move into apps like Entreport, which is like this whole massive system thing, and it does everything. And then I just want to create a simple flipping product, and it's almost impossible to do. And it's so interesting, like the balance of depth, because once you go too deep, it looks a mess, whereas Notion is deep enough. And Obsidian, I don't think is a mess. I don't have that Obsidian's a mess either. I just think there is.
I think what I have in my head is when you go into Notion, it's hard to start with Notion because you need complexity. Like you can't really use Notion well without a database. But a database itself is quite challenging for new users. Whereas Obsidian, you can pick it up and just go straight away because it's literally just a page and write. But Notion, once you've figured out databases, there's small increases here and there. Obsidian, once you've started Obsidian, and as soon as you open the can of worms of community plugins, it's like here's a whole new world. Aladdin reference. Oh, new world. Yeah, that whole thing. And that was really bad. But yeah, this whole new world has opened up. And unless you are mature enough, unlike someone on this call, unless you have the ability to constrain yourself and go, okay, I'm not going to use all of the plugins. I'm not going to try all the CSS themes. I'm not going to try and learn every single feature of this app because it's literally impossible. And you say, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to use what I need to use. Like my recent video about Obsidian, why I switched. You use Obsidian like Word. Use the features you actually want to use. No one knows what all the other buttons in Word do. Like, I don't know what the references does, even though I use references. I don't know how to format the stuff in Word. It's disgusting. It's horrible. I don't want to learn how to do that. And more than half the plugins in Obsidian are the same. I'm like, I don't want to use that. I have 3 community plugins: Zotero integrations, Tag Wrangler, and dataview. Dataview was added like 2 weeks ago. That's it. All the other stuff is core to Obsidian. And then you've got other people that are like, I have 25 community plugins. Great. Why? Obviously, there are use cases for it, but you really don't need it.
I'm not really intrigued at how many I've got. Yeah, I'm actually looking.
Oh my god, you counted longer than 3 seconds.
No, I was just trying to find my way in because I don't go in here very often. YouTube
Control Shift
plugins.
S for
1,
me.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. How many I'm actually using? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not actually using half of these either. Nowhere near as many as I've got on. I don't use meta edit. I don't really use periodic. I do use periodic notes. Have you got rid of periodic notes then?
Yeah, I got rid of that months ago.
Interesting.
Well,
Interesting.
wait, when you think
Yeah.
about it, what are they for? Tasks. What do I use tasks, Morgan?
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, yeah, I have a couple in here that I don't actually use anymore. I just haven't turned them off because I'm not in here enough to warrant it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's the same as like some of the hotkeys and settings and core plugins and things. Like, I still have the audio recorder core plugin active, but I haven't used it in 7 months. it's just a button that I can click if I want to.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just looking at all of these and going, yeah, I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, uninstall, 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 uninstall.
I am quite literally doing that right now as we talk. I'm just like, oh, uninstall that one, install that one. I do have some questions around the fact that you're now using the Zotero integration on its own. That I do have questions for, which maybe we'll have a little chit chat afterwards. But yeah.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of calling the call there. Get it, calling the call there, because
Hello, this call is called now. Hello, goodbye. Yeah.
I mean, I think we've covered data and I think we've covered the apps quite well. And if anyone is, so I tweeted quite recently, like while we're recording this, what queries they have, because I'm curious to see like what's the most frequent search they have. Like in Notion, what's your most frequent database view that's got the filters and sorts? Like, what's your most frequent? Is it actions? Is it tasks? What you filter by? What you group by? What you sort by? In Roam or Remnote or Logseek, whatever. What's your most frequent search? And if there is like a collection of frequent searches, maybe you could just make, or someone, either me, whoever, can make a database or a vault that has those frequent searches made for you, and then you just have it done,
that'd
sorted.
be amazing. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
It saves all the hassle of having to make the searches yourself.
I like that.
Yeah, so if you do have a favorite search or a go-to searches, let me know. Tweet at me. Tweet at me, and I'm gonna make it. Yeah, tweet at me, because I want to make a list of the most frequent database view like once. Like, how do I filter for just a page? How do I filter for just this, that, or the other? Because there are things that you do in Notion. You're like, I just do this, but I can't find at the moment a resource where it goes, oh, you just do this. I have to go into the documentation, but like, is it from? Is it where? Do I need a file.note something? Like, how do I do this? And that's what I want to try and put together. So yeah, let me know.
I like that. Yeah, let us know. Well, let him know because he'll do it, and I'll just enjoy.
You'll just use it, use and abuse.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you very much.
Right. See you guys next week.
Bye bye.